Ever run out of acetate when you're ready to make your shaker cards? Well, don't worry, I've got a fun little hack for you. In today's video, we are turning a simple scrap piece of plastic into a beautiful shaker element because nothing goes to waste in our craft room. We'll be creating a clean and simple thinking of you card that brings together background stamping, stenciling, and soft ink blending, all finished off with some fun florals for that perfect touch. Hi everyone, I'm Revati and welcome to my crafty space. Let's get started. I'm so excited to play with some fun, gorgeous new goodies from the latest In My Heart release by Simon Stamp. Let me quickly walk you through what I'll be using and why I love each of these. Now, first up, we will be using the Gerbera Daisies background stamp. Now, this is a stamp set that I've used in one of my previous video. It creates those beautiful full clusters of daisies in one impression, making it perfect for filling up your panel or in our case, adding a lovely floral scene inside the shaker window. It gives you that detailed layered look without a lot of efforts. Now I will leave a link to the video where I shared two cards that I created using just this one background stamp. I will leave a link to that in the description box below. Next we have the big basket weave stencil. This one will add such a gorgeous woven texture to our background. It's perfect for that soft ink blending and adds interest without overpowering your design. Now to match the Gerbera daisies, I have this die set. This is from an older release. This is the tilted daisies die, which will cut out those two daisies. Absolutely beautiful and delicate. Now to save us some time in the video, I went ahead and off camera, I cut all the little pieces using white cardstock. And we will be adding some beautiful, very subtle ink blending to the petals and greens to the stem and yellow to our flower centers. Now this is a layering die set, so you can layer those two petals for a beautiful fuller look. One of my favorite ways to add ink blending to die cut pieces is by placing them onto my ultra sticky mat. This really helps keep everything in place, especially when you're working with delicate and intricate pieces like these flower petals. Now for these florals, I'm adding just a hint of gray to the centers of the petal and softly blending it outward towards the edges. I'm using the shade Earl, which is a beautiful mid-tone gray from the Positively Saturated Ink collection. And along with a mini ink blending brush, I will apply the lightest touch of this color right at the center, blending it about halfway through each petal. Now don't worry if the centers look a bit too dark or heavily inked. We'll be adding a small die cut piece right on top of that, which will cover most of that area perfectly. You can absolutely go bold with your color choices here. Think bright pinks, purples, or even vibrant yellows. But for this card, I decided to stay on the softer side, which is a bit different from my usual style. I really wanted to experiment with a lighter color palette, which is why I went with this subtle gray and white combination. Once I finished the petals, I cleaned my mat and then kept the delicate stems and the flower centers right on my mat and moved on to adding color to those. For the flower centers, I used citrine and zest to bring that warm, cheerful yellow, which I thought matched perfectly with the gray and the white petals. And for my stems, I used field and pine, which honestly is one of my all-time favorite green combination when it comes to ink blending on any foliage or stems like these. It gives such a natural, fresh look to any leafy elements and ties everything together beautifully. I love the blend of that softer green from field and this bright green, a dark shade of green from pine. Now that all the ink blending is done, we can go ahead and start assembling our little flowers. I did go ahead and cut the detailed daisy set twice. That's why you see so many die cut pieces here. But for this card, I'll be using only two of the flowers. The extras are perfect to save for another project, or you could even use them to decorate the insides of your card or your envelopes. Now, putting these pieces together is actually really easy. I'm just adding tiny drops of glue to the flower centers and then layering the petals, slightly offsetting them as I go. This helps create a fuller, more dimensional flower and really brings those daisies to life. Now that all the petals are in place, I will next add the yellow flower centers that we ink blended earlier right on top of each of those flowers. And you'll notice how beautifully those larger centers cover up that dark gray ink blending in the middle. So everything comes together seamlessly and looks perfectly finished. I absolutely love this yellow, gray, and white combination. It's quickly becoming one of my all time favorite color palettes. It feels so fresh, soft, and elegant, and I am really glad I stepped a little outside my usual color choices for this one. I'll go ahead and set my flowers aside, and now we can start working on the background. Now, I'm using this beautiful 6 by 6 inch stencil, and I'll be stamping it onto a white cardstock panel. I really wanted to keep the color palette within that soft yellow, gray, and white combination, so I chose flannel, which is the lightest shade of gray that I have in my stash. I did stamp the background twice onto that white panel just to get a cleaner and more even impression. It might look a little darker right now, but trust me, it softens quite a bit as the ink dries. And once the whole card comes together, that gray settles into the most beautiful subtle background. I absolutely love how this background turned out, and honestly, it is one of those designs you could use in so many ways, not just behind the shaker window. This color combination would look absolutely stunning even as a full cut front on its own. I'll set the panel aside for now and let's move on to our card front. For this, I'll be creating a heart-shaped window. I'm using the nested rounded hearts die set from Simon's Stamp. This is from one of their older releases, which is why you'll notice that the dies are still tapped together. Thankfully, the newer set comes with separate dies, which is such a game changer. You don't have to snip it every time you get a new package die. Now for my panel, I use the second largest die from the die set and cut a window slightly towards the left hand side of my main panel. This will give us a nice focal point for our shaker element while leaving room to build around it, which is where we will be placing our floral elements. So basically we have two focal point elements in just one card front. Now here's the reasoning behind placing the window on the left hand side. This way, the shaker window sits nicely on one side of the panel, leaving a blank space free. That empty area is perfect for adding our beautifully die cut and ink blended daisies, which will really balance the design and bring the whole card together. Now, even though I have already assembled the petals and added the flower centers, I haven't attached the stems yet. I like to wait until the very end once the shaker is in place and the card front is assembled, so I can see exactly how much space each of those flowers need and where the stems should go. That way everything fits perfectly and looks balanced. Normally, if I was making a traditional dimensional shaker card with acetate, I'd place the acetate behind the window and use some foam tape to pop that panel. But since I was out of acetate this time, I decided to repurpose some waste plastic that I had from some packaging. Because why let it go to waste, right? Now we are going to turn it into our shaker pocket. Now, if I had used foam tape, I'd normally line the heart with it so that the shaker elements stay perfectly inside the window. But since we are skipping that step, here's what I did instead. I cut the background panel to measure slightly larger than the heart window and then created a pocket using the plastic wrap. This way, the shaker pieces stay contained and still get that fun interactive element without needing any acetate. To create the shaker pocket, I start by adding double-sided tape along two opposite sides of my panel. I press them down to seal those edges completely, make sure they are absolutely tight and snug. Next, I add tape to the remaining two sides, but this time I'll seal only one side. This leaves an opening so we can fill the pocket with our shaker elements before sealing it completely. Since we are working with plastic, I prefer using double-sided tape instead of liquid glue. Liquid glue can take a long time to dry, and with plastic, it has a tendency to ooze out and create a mess. Double-sided tape, on the other hand, sticks instantly and keeps everything neat, making it a perfect choice for techniques like this. Now that our shaker pocket is ready, I'm going to add the chunky glitter mix. Now this is a subtle, elegant mix that adds just the right amount of sparkle without overpowering the background or that soft ink blended floral die cut piece. It gives the shaker a fun, eye-catching shimmer while keeping the overall design light and delicate. I'll add some scoops of this glitter mix using a little spatula or spoon that I have in my stash, and then we can make sure that the amount of glitter mix is as much as we require, and then remove the backing from the last edge of the shaker pocket and seal the pocket completely. I like to use my scissors to snip off any of that extra plastic that is hanging off the edge, and with that, our edge to edge shaker pocket is ready. If I were using the entire background panel for my card front, I would absolutely use it to create a full edge to edge shaker card. I think that would look absolutely stunning. The soft gray pattern combined with the subtle shimmer would really make this design pop. So we have our die cut florals ready, the shaker window is ready, but the card front with that heart window also needed some love. So I bought in the big basket weave stencil and added a touch of yellow around the heart. Now this blending is intentionally imperfect. I just took some citrine ink on a large ink blending brush and lightly applied it in random corners of the panel. The goal was to create a soft, subtle, and light, unfinished ink blended look that adds warmth and interest without overpowering the entire design. I really do love creating clean and simple cards. That's mostly my go to style. But I have to say, this is probably the very first time I've worked with such a light color palette, keeping it just to these three colors. We have white, yellow, and gray. It's definitely unusual for me, but I really enjoyed experimenting with something soft and subtle like this. Now that all our elements are ready, it's time to assemble everything onto a card base. I'm using a top folded A2 size card base for this one, and we will start by attaching the shaker window first. To make sure that the shaker pockets align perfectly with the die cut heart, I first added some double sided tape to the back of the pocket. Then I held the pocket and the front panel together with a bit of washi tape and gently pressed them down onto our card piece. This ensures everything is lined up just right. Now, since our shaker pocket is slightly smaller than the panel, we cannot just glue the card front down directly. It would be a little wobbly. So to get a clean crisp finish, I added foam tape around the edges of the card front. This will not only pop up our window, but will also create enough space between the window and the sparkling shaker bits in the background, so everything moves freely and looks perfect. Now that our shaker window is in place, we can go ahead and add our floral die cuts and our sentiment strip. For the sentiment, instead of stamping and creating my sentiment label, I am using the Excel Reverse Friendship Easy Strips. Now this is a set. This is a pack of 4 of these sheets of sentiments which is printed on a black toner paper. This makes them perfect for foiling if you want to add a metallic touch to your sentiment strips. I'll be using the coordinating rounded edge die to cut all of these sentiments at once, which is super convenient. I really love having sets like these because they make card making so much more faster and easier. Everything is ready to go. You just pick the sentiment that fits your design and then you're done. For our card today, I will be using the sentiment that says, thinking of you. I use some liquid glue to adhere our floral pieces in place. The shaker window still has a bit of open space, so it's totally fine if some of those petals hang slightly over the edge of the heart. Now, if you prefer, you could add tiny pieces of foam tape to hold them more securely, but I think I'll leave it as is. Once I positioned my first flower where I wanted, I added a delicate stem underneath the flower, then placed the second flower just below it. I did trim a little bit off the stem of my second flower to make sure everything fits perfectly on the card front. For my sentiment, I added a small piece of foam tape in the center and used liquid glue along the edges. This way, the height is balanced and it sits perfectly with the rest of the layered elements. I just love how all these elements came together: the soft ink blending, delicate die cuts, and subtle background stamping, and that black sentiment strip really pops against it all. It gives the card just the right amount of contrast. Initially, I thought of adding sequins around the flowers, but then I considered some splatters instead. By this point, traditional watercolor splatters felt a little too late, and I only wanted very subtle touch of black. So instead, I went with faux splattering, a technique I absolutely love for adding controlled minimum amount of splatters on my card front. All you need is a black gel pen, marker, or even an alcohol based pen, and you can add tiny dots randomly across your card front. It gives the look of splatter without the mess and unpredictability of real watercolor. And there we have it, our clean and simple Thinking of You shaker card, complete with soft ink blending, delicate die cut flowers, a subtle stencil background, and a fun faux splatter finish. I love how the yellow, gray, and white color palette came together. It's soft, elegant, and a little different from my usual style, but so refreshing. If you enjoyed this project, don't forget to check out the other videos in my playlist where I share more tips, tricks, and creative ideas using these latest products. Now, please note that all of the supplies that I used to create this card will be listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. There's something so satisfying about layering texture, and this one is just beautiful. If you love die cutting, today's project is all about soft texture, rich colors, and effortless layering. I'm combining papers from Your Paper Insider with the Feathered Beauty die by Altenew to create something bold yet still elegant and refined. Hello, crafty friends. I'm Revati, and welcome to my crafty space. Let's get started. Well, this is the Feathered Beauty layering die by Altenew, and it is such a stunning piece. It creates a beautiful detailed bird in flight with layered feathers that add so much depth and movement. I love that it also includes those delicate florals so you can build a complete scene or let it shine as your bold focal point. And even though it looks intricate, Altenew's layering system makes it super easy to put together. This includes the keyhole mechanisms where you can align all the pieces depending on the size and the shape of the keyhole. Everything is numbered and layered, so definitely it looks complicated, but once you have all the pieces in place, these things are very easy to layer. You can see that each of these pieces are numbered and has a specific keyhole, so aligning becomes a lot more easy. To bring this beautiful bird to life, I leaned into my love for bright pinks, purples, and yellows. Such a vibrant and joyful color combination. For my layers, I'm using a mix of gorgeous textures. I have the Dahlia color wheel cardstock, some light pink non shed glitter cardstock, beeswax yellow for the warmth, and beautiful violet metallic cardstock that adds rich luxe shine. For my background, I'm using a unique element, a soft tissue paper, which adds the most delicate texture without overpowering the design. Now, this is just a sneak peek of the papers that I'll be using. I will be walking you through each one of these as we build the layers so you can see exactly how everything comes together. All of these papers are from the Your Paper Insider box number 14, except for the green cardstock that I'll be using to create my leaves. That one is from a previous box, I believe, box number 13 or 12. Well, I went ahead and die cut all of these layers of the birds using these papers. And well, for the solid layers, which is the pink and the yellow, and even the green, we will be adding a bit of ink blending to create depth and dimension. Of course, you could absolutely die cut the entire bird from white cardstock and bring in color using your favorite inks, but that would give you a completely different but equally beautiful look. To save some time, I have already die cut all the layers using the different colored cardstocks. The packaging actually shows this bird in a gorgeous shade of blue, which I definitely want to try in a future project. But for today, I'm sticking with something bright, bold, and vibrant with these beautiful pinks, purples, and yellows. Now, I could have simply layered all of these pieces together and called it done, but I really wanted to bring this bird to life. So instead, I decided to slow things down and add a little bit of extra detail to each of the layers with some ink blending. I set all the pieces aside and bought in my Ultra Sticky Mat by Altenew. This has become such an essential tool for me, especially when I'm working with these tiny, delicate die cut pieces. It holds everything in place so I can really focus on the blending without worrying about anything shifting or moving around. I started with these leaves, and this is where things begin to feel a little magical. Whenever I'm working on foliage, I most instinctively reach for my favorite color combination, which is pine and field positively saturated inks by Simon Stamp. There's just something about these two shades of colors when they come together. They create the most natural depth, which is something that I absolutely love. Now, even if I'm working with plain white cardstock, I know I can rely on this combination to build that beautiful rich color from scratch. I would use the lighter field to ink blend all over the white panel, followed by pine for the shading. It's one of those little go to tricks that I come back to again and again, and it never fails me. Now, before I start adding color to my feathers, I wanted to show you something really thoughtful about this die set. Each of these feathers is actually numbered, and the keyhole design is slightly different on every single piece, which makes layering them so much more easier and completely stress free. It is one of these little details that really makes a difference when you're putting things together, especially when there are so many tiny little pieces. Now, moving on to the feathers, I went with the pink tones to keep that bright and vibrant look going. For this, I bought in cherry and rose inks from the Positively Saturated Ink collection. These are such rich, beautiful shades and they blend in so effortlessly. You'll notice I didn't keep the color the same on every feather. I played around with the intensity, adding deeper tones to some areas and keeping others softer, and just to give that bird a bit more natural dimensional look. It's those subtle variations that really help bring everything to life. I can remove all of these pieces, clean my ultra sticky mat with some plain water and a microfiber cloth, and then I will place in all of those yellow pieces. Now, for the main body of the bird, I cut this layer with that beautiful yellow cardstock along with all the tiny little facial features that really bring the personality. And this is where the bird really starts to come together to life. Now, for the body, I reached for citrine as my base, which is almost the same as that of the cardstock itself, and then softly blended a hint of mandarin to add warmth and bit of a glow. It is a very subtle shift in color, but it makes a difference when you finally assemble everything together. For the face, I wanted just a touch of contrast, something soft, but enough to define those tiny little details. So I bought in a bit of woodsy, which is a warm brown shade, to add a little delicate depth without overpowering the yellows. It's all about those little touches, layering color slowly and letting each piece add that story to our bird. Now, let's take a closer look at the keyhole mechanism. Now, this is the base of the bird's body, and you can see all those tiny keyholes etched into it. This is where everything comes together. Each feather layer has its own matching keyhole, and what I love is that they are all slightly different in size and shape, so there is really no guesswork when it comes to aligning them together. It almost feels like putting together a little puzzle, but one that's beautifully designed to fall into place. So I'll start by placing the first layer of the wings and the feathered tail, gently lining them up with those keyholes, and then slowly, layer by layer, I build up everything, watching that the depth and the dimension come to life with each piece that we add. Now, this is honestly my favorite part in this entire project when all those individual elements start transforming into one beautiful detailed bird. I'll be honest, when I first looked at all those tiny little dies in the set, I was a little intimidated. There are quite a few pieces, and at the first glance, it feels like it might be a little complicated. But the moment I started cutting them out and noticed that each piece has its own unique keyhole, I felt so relieved. And once I began assembling everything, it all just clicked. It's one of those designs that looks intricate but is actually so easy and intuitive to put together. I started layering each of those tiny pieces one over the other, and as I went, you can really see the magic happening here. Now, because we've added different intensities of ink to the feathers, there is this beautiful depth building up across the wings and the tail. It almost gives the bird a soft dimensional movement. And then once we bring in that warm yellow orange body, it completely transforms the whole piece. Suddenly, it's not just the layers of paper anymore, it's a vibrant, lively bird coming together right in front of you. And of course, we can't forget those tiny little detail pieces that we cut using the pink glitter cardstock. They may be small, but they make such a difference, adding that perfect finishing touch and just the hint of sparkle to our bird. Around the same time, I also went ahead and assembled the floral arrangement so everything was ready to come together. Now it was time to move on to our background, and I'll be honest, this was a tough choice. You already know how much I love the Thai Unru papers by Your Paper Insider. They're so rich and full of character. But at the same time, I really wanted to use the white hemp floral flower tissue paper that was included in box number 14. It has such a delicate, intricate design, very soft, very elegant. Now, since both of these papers are quite thin, I knew I had to layer them onto white cardstock before using them for my card front. So I went ahead and prepped both options and then started playing around, placing my bird and the floral arrangement on top of each of these papers just to see how everything fell together. And honestly, it was such a hard decision. On one side, I had this bold, beautiful blue of the Thai Unuru paper, and on the other, I had this soft textured white hem floral design. But in the end, I chose the white hem flower tissue paper. There's just something about that subtle texture and tone. It really allows the bird to stand out and shine while still adding that beautiful, intricate detail in the background. Now, since this is a very delicate tissue like paper, you have to be a little careful with how you adhere it. Using liquid glue isn't really an option here, it tends to seep through and show on the surface. And then regular double sided tape can sometimes be visible underneath, which can take away from that soft, clean look. So instead, I like to use a full sheet of double sided adhesive on my white card panel. I especially love the ones from Altenew. They are nice and sturdy, and once everything is in place, I don't have to worry about the tissue paper lifting or peeling over time. The way I like to do this is pretty simple. I peel off one side of the adhesive sheet and adhere it directly onto my white panel. I then carefully place the tissue paper starting from one edge and slowly lay it down almost like I'm gliding it across the surface, letting it naturally stick as I go. Now, once it's in place, I take my bone folder and gently burnish everything down. This really helps secure the paper evenly and ensures that there's no bubbles or lifting along the edges. And in the end, you're left with a beautifully smooth and perfectly adhered background without any of that adhesive showing through. I trimmed my panel down to measure 4 by 5 and quarters, which is slightly smaller than your standard A2 size card base. Now, for the base, I didn't want to go tone on tone using a white card base. Instead, I chose a very soft, light pink base, something that would beautifully complement with the vibrant pink tones on our bird without taking away from it. Now, before adhering everything down, I like to take a moment to just place everything onto my panel, making sure that the bird and the floral arrangement fit perfectly within that space and we still have some space left for our sentiment. Once I was happy with the placement, I went ahead and mounted the panel onto my card base. I like to add a bit of dimension here, so I used some foam tape behind the panel and adhered it onto my card base. And I love how that subtle hint of pink peeks through around the edges. It frames the entire design so softly and ties everything together. Now it's time to bring everything together. I started by assembling all my die cut pieces. For the bird and the green foliage, I used liquid glue and placed them diagonally opposite to each other on the card front. It just helps create a nice visual balance across the design. For the flowers on the vine, I added little pieces of foam tape and that'll give just a slight lift but a bit of a dimension. And at this point, I have to say I'm absolutely loving how this card is coming together. Now, all that's left is to add a sentiment to finish it off. For my sentiment, I'm using a beautiful phrase which says, "Sending you a smile." This phrase comes from the Garden Gala stamp set. I have actually used this set before in a video and I completely fell in love with it. Not just for that gorgeous floral images on the set, but also the sentiments here are absolutely stunning. I stamped the sentiment using white embossing powder on a strip of black cardstock and then placed it right across the design, slightly overlapping the bird and the floral elements. That little contrast of black and white really helps ground the design, brings everything together beautifully. Now, even though we already added that light pink glitter cardstock to our bird, I still felt like the card needed just a little more sparkle. So I bought in some yellow sequins from the Warm Tones Dazzling Gems by Simon's Stamp and placed them right in the centers of our flowers. And that was the perfect finishing touch for our card. With that, our card is complete. I absolutely love how this turned out. The bright, vibrant colors on our focal point paired with a soft textured background, it all comes together so beautifully and quickly. The texture is quite subtle, so it doesn't fully show up here on camera, but in real life, it adds such an elegant and delicate detail to our entire card. It really makes the whole design feel extra special. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching today's video and got inspired to create something beautiful. And don't forget that this little die is super easy to assemble and everything came together so beautifully. I'll be sure to link all the supplies that I used to create this card in the description down below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. So let's take a look at all the papers that are included in the Your Paper Insider box number 15. Now this unfortunately is going to be the last box by Your Paper Insider because they are shutting down, and well, until then all the papers are 50% off starting April 15th. So you get papers from all the previous boxes and also any of the specialty papers that they have in stock, and all of them are 50% off. Now I have been using Your Paper Insider papers for almost maybe more than 2 years, and I joined their design team in October last year, which was absolutely stunning. So here you see we have a tiny little group, and Christy, Carrie, Susan, Davina, and me. We have been part of the design team since October 2025, and I can say that we all love these papers and they are absolutely versatile and can be used not just for card makers, but if you're into scrapbooking or love papers in any form, this set is definitely for you. Now box number 15 has a collection of beautiful papers. It's all in almost every color of the rainbow you'll find here, along with some beautiful shimmering glittery papers as well. Let me walk you through each one of them. Now, every box comes with some little surprise element other than the papers itself. This one has these little envelopes. These are white in color and there are 10 in a pack. These measure 3 by 3 inches, can be used to slip in tiny little notes in your gift baskets or your bouquets. I absolutely love them. I think I could also use them on my card fronts as well. Let's see how we use these. I will definitely have videos where I share projects of how I make use of these tiny little envelopes. Now, okay. So the first one is my absolute favorite. This is the green brushed metal double-sided cardstock. If you've seen my videos, you know that I have the same exact thing in gold and red, something that I absolutely love. This is definitely a lot thicker, so if you plan on doing some intricate die cutting, that would be quite tricky. I would definitely recommend using a shim or a white printer paper or any kind of thin cardstock. Run that along with your dies. It'll cut beautifully. Followed by that, we have this beautiful park green color plan cardstock. This is almost a beautiful mint green and heavyweight cardstock, perfect for your card bases. Followed by that, we have the evergreen Miri sparkle paper. Beautiful paper. Unlike the non-shed glitter cardstocks, this one is a lot thinner, and again, it's not the shiny glittery paper, it's more of a sparkle, a subtle shine that it gives to the paper. Next is one of my absolute favorite when it comes to any box. Now these are the Thai Unru papers, very lightweight feather-like paper with those beautiful fabric details are etched on that, and this one is the teal Thai Unru paper, my absolute favorite. Followed by that, we have the Aloe Curious Metallics. This is almost has a metallic like finish. It looks white here on camera, but it is giving out a beautiful shine. In real life, it looks really pretty. Would be perfect for your card bases or your card fronts, backgrounds. Next, we have Aqua Portal holographic cardstock. Now, usually whenever I get holographic cardstock, I like to have little die cut pieces of tiny little hearts or sequins or confetti mix. Now, this one, I love the radiating pattern. I would definitely use this as a card background. Now, these are my, again, absolute favorites from Your Paper Insider, the non-shed glitter cardstock. This is pale green. I have almost all the colors that they have, and I use them for many of my projects. All of these colors are so beautiful. It's non-shed. You won't get any glitter on your hand, which makes it absolutely perfect for your cards. So not messy. Next we have the Peacock Curious Metallics. Again, a beautiful peacock shade with that subtle shine and shimmer. Here you see how that light catches the shimmer right there. Moving on to the darker teal, we have Deep Sea Teal cardstock, followed by the Turquoise Color Plan cardstock, both of which are heavyweight cardstock and can be used as card bases. Next, we have another non-shed glitter cardstock. This is the Lilac shade, beautiful shade of lilac lavender, and something that I love to pair with my pink cardstocks. For pinks, we have the Orchid Brushed Metal. Now, unlike the double-sided brush metal, this one is just single-sided. We don't have that metallic finish on both the sides. So here you have a thinner brushed metal. This is Orchid, a beautiful pink that can be perfectly coordinated with the lilac shimmer non-shed glitter cardstock. Next we have the bubblegum pink cardstock, which is a heavyweight cardstock again that can be used for your card bases. Followed by that we have the Aspire Petalics Mountain Rose cardstock. Now this again is that beautiful metallic shine on it. It is a lighter weight cardstock, so can be used for delicate die cut pieces. Next we have Virtual Pearl Curious Metallics, beautiful pearl white finish and that metallic glow on this. It is kind of different from the earlier metallic, the white metallic that you saw, Aloe Curious Metallics. Now moving on to some brighter tones, warmer tones, we have some Meridian Yellow cardstock, a very bright yellow, again heavyweight cardstock, followed by Sherbet Color Plan cardstock, a lighter shade of yellow. Then again we have a non-shed glitter cardstock in light yellow. So right now we have 3 non-shed glitter cardstocks, absolutely stunning. Now this one really caught my eye in this box. This is the Gold Curious Translucent Vellum. Now I have seen a beautiful collection of vellum with Your Paper Insider, but this gold vellum is something really unique and I can see myself using these in so many different ways on my cards. And since I love my florals so much, I feel I would be incorporating this gold vellum on my florals as well. Followed by that we have the Gold Curious Alchemy cardstock. This is more of a very warmer gold as compared to that bright gold that you usually see, more leaning towards bronze and copper. I absolutely love this cardstock and this would give a beautiful finish to any of your vintage like projects. Next we have the Champagne Diamond Glitter. Now I have the diamond glitter in gold and rainbow, and this is something that I absolutely love when creating frames or using on bigger dies as compared to using them on intricate dies. This gives beautiful results. Moving on to some silver, we have the Lone Seed Curious Metallics cardstock. Again, that beautiful silver metallic shine on this. Another holographic cardstock. This is the Silver Holographic Bird's Nest. Beautiful shine, and just look at that, those lines on that. It's just like the name suggests, a bird's nest. Beautiful bird's nest. Last but not the least, we have the Oxford Linen cardstock, which is a very super soft card paper. It's unlike the solid colored cardstocks, the heavyweight cardstock. This one is heavyweight, smooth, but has the slightest texture. I don't know if the camera is picking that up, but it definitely has the lightest texture on this. So those were all the cardstocks that we saw in box number 15. Please note that all the products, including this one and the products from the past boxes and any of those specialty papers on your paper insider, will be 50% off starting April 15th. So please take a look at the website, and I would definitely want to thank everyone in the Your Paper Insider team for coming up with these gorgeous papers and making crafting so beautiful. I would like to wish everyone on the team all the very best for the future. I'm really sad to see the company shut down, but here's hoping for the best for the future. Before wrapping this up, I would definitely like to share a few cards that I created over the period of time using some of my absolute favorite papers by Your Paper Insider. Now, this one was the most recent card that I created. We have that beautiful background on paper. This is again that tissue-like paper. And this bird, the glitter cardstock, all of these papers come from Your Paper Insider. We have one of that beautiful gold shimmery paper. Now, I created a frame out of that. Absolutely stunning. Now, whenever I recently started watercoloring and getting into watercoloring, and the first paper that comes into my mind is the watercolor papers by Your Paper Insider. It holds the colors really well, and I absolutely love how these cards turned out. I'm definitely a beginner at watercolorings, but this is a paper that I will absolutely recommend to anyone who is into watercoloring. Now here's one card that I created using the black glitter cardstock. Now I have had so many glitter cardstocks in the past, but never had a black, and this one is jet black, something beautiful. It created such a beautiful silhouette here on my card. Now these origami papers were something really beautiful and stunning. I absolutely loved how they catch the light and how gorgeous they look. Here's another project using all of the non-shed glitter cardstocks to create this beautiful flowers and one of the metallic greens for the wreath. And here I created a Ferris wheel. Here the background is one of those curious metallic cardstocks, followed by some fun non-shed glitter and curious metallic in purple for the wheels. Again, mixing up some pinks and purples for my florals. Next, we have some fun use of vellum. Now here I embossed vellum to create this fun little card. I die cut vellum, and then I did some heat embossing on vellum. So there were projects where I shared techniques where we could use your vellum. And don't forget that beautiful metallic stripe. Here again, I created a wreath using die cut vellums and some beautiful green cardstocks. And again, the gold is by Your Paper Insider. And this holiday card has to be my absolute favorite, where I cut out this bow using the red brush metal. Now this one was the double-sided, so here you see I did have a tough time cutting out those delicate lines, but I ran it through my die cutting machine a couple of times. I used a vellum tag, and that's a beautiful holographic you see here on the red. I absolutely love how this card turned out. So thank you for joining me today. I will leave links to all the supplies and all the discounts in the description box below. Please do check it out. Also, please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Would you believe this birthday cake is actually a card? And yes, it still fits inside a regular A2 size envelope. Today, I'm bringing back those sweet childhood flavors of strawberry and chocolate to create a fun cake shaped birthday card filled with beautiful sentiments and a few little surprises along the way. Hi everyone, I'm Revati, and stay with me because I'm going to show you exactly how this unique shaped card comes together from start to finish. I'll be using some really fun new products from This Calls for Confetti, and well, they have such a unique birthday theme product line. Now, first up, I will be sharing this beautiful birthday sentiment stamp set, which features 17 different sentiments. Yes, you heard it right. We have 17 birthday sentiments, giving you so many fun ways to personalize your cards. And the best part, 15 of those are designed to perfectly align with the three-tier cake stencil, or you can die cut them out all at once using the coordinating die. So you get multiple sentiments ready to go in one die cut. Now, this is the coordinating dies, which will cut out each of those sentiments, creating 15 sentiment labels and two separate sentiments, which are bigger, also can be used as the focal point for your card. Now, they also have this amazing three-tier cake stencil and die bundle. It includes layering stencils that help you build a fun dimensional cake for any occasion. And the coordinating die cuts out the entire piece perfectly. The finished cake is about 4 by 5 and quarter inches, so it fits beautifully inside a standard A2 size envelope. Now, I'll be using those two sets for our card today. There is also this gorgeous cloche hot foil plate and coordinating dies, which I'll definitely be using in an upcoming video. Initially, I was going to keep this card super simple, just stencil the cake directly onto an A2 size card panel and then stamp the sentiments right over the image. But as I was looking at the design, I thought this cake is just too fun to stay flat. Why not turn it into something a little more special? So instead, I decided to create a shaped card, and honestly, this completely changed the look of the project. I started with that big cake die you see there. This was part of the stencil and die bundle. I started with an A2 size panel and placed the cake die right over it. And this is the best part. You will notice that the entire design fits perfectly within that A2 size, which means we still get a fun, unique shape and it fits inside your standard A2 size envelope. Now, once I was happy with the placement, I ran it through my die cutting machine. And once it was out of the machine, just look at that beautiful cake shape. Already, it feels so much more playful and eye catching, and we haven't even added any color yet. You could absolutely stamp and stencil first and then go with your die cutting at the end. But personally, I like to die cut first. It just helps me avoid any accidental smudging or messy edges later on, especially when working with detailed designs like this one. So once I had my cake shape ready, I placed it on my stamp wheel and secured it in place using a little bit of washi tape along the base, just to make sure nothing shifts while I'm working. Next, I bought in one of the stencils, not just for stenciling itself, but also as a guide. This helps me perfectly align each tier of the cake. And it also gives me a really helpful reference for where my sentiments are going to sit later on. Taking a moment here to line everything up properly really makes the rest of the process so much more smoother and ensures everything comes together beautifully in the end. For this card, we are going to use an embossed resist technique where we add ink blending right over our embossed sentiments to make them really stand out. To start, I prep my panel using an anti-static powder tool. This step is super important to avoid any stray embossing powder sticking where we don't want it to. Then I stamped my sentiments using Obsidian Pigment ink. This is by Altnew. And I actually stamped them twice just to get that really crisp, solid impression. Once that was done, I carefully peeled out this panel from my stamp wheel and then I put some clear embossing powder over it. And well, this is one of my favorite parts. That beautiful shine it adds instantly elevates the look of the sentiments. Now, I definitely prefer adding clear embossing powder to both my stamped sentiments as well as using any kind of stamped focal point images, whether I'm ink blending or coloring in an image using alcohol markers. This is a technique that I absolutely love using. Well, Once I have my powder in place, I will funnel the rest back into the container. Then I will heat set everything using my heat tool. Now, since we are working with a larger surface area, I like to make sure my heat tool is fully heated before bringing it to the panel. And as I heat emboss, I keep the tool moving constantly, never staying in one spot for too long, just to prevent any warping. For shaped designs like this one, it's really important to maintain that structure as much as possible. But if you notice a bit of warping, don't worry, you can always place your panel under something heavy, like a stack of books, and it'll flatten it out beautifully. Here's a closer look at our finished panel. Isn't it absolutely stunning? The shine this gives is really beautiful. Before moving on to any ink blending, I like to let my panel rest for a bit and cool down completely. This step is really important because I don't want any of that embossing powder to smudge when I start ink blending over it. Once it is fully cooled, the embossing powder sets nice and firm, and that's exactly what we want for that clean embossed resist effect. Now, once ready, I placed my panel onto a sticky mat and lined up the first stencil from the bundle right over the cake. And honestly, these stencils are super easy to align, which makes the whole process so much more enjoyable. Now came the fun part, which was choosing colors. I'll admit I was a little confused at first. In one of my previous projects that I uploaded on Instagram just yesterday, I went all out with rainbow frosting. But for this card, I wanted to keep things a bit more simple and classic. So I chose soft pinks for my frosting and paired it with browns for the cake layers. And well, I have to say, this instantly took me back to my childhood. Chocolate cake was always my favorite and is even now my favorite. But I absolutely love that pink frosting on top, which I was convinced was strawberry. Now that I think it was probably just regular frosting with a little food coloring, but back then it felt so special. Projects like these really remind me of how simple and joyful those moments were. And I love how this card is coming together. The colors blend so beautifully, and it truly feels like a little piece of nostalgia, like being a 5-year old again, excited about a birthday cake. Maybe not a cake this big, but definitely just as sweet as this one. To keep the color gradient soft and a little more playful, I added lighter shade of pink right at the center of each of those layers and then slowly blended a darker shade towards the edges. It's a simple step, but that little bit of shading adds so much more depth and dimension to the cake and really makes those layers stand out. Once I was happy with the first stencil, I carefully peeled it off, taking my time here so I don't smudge anything. And then I got in stencil number two, which is going to add the base layers for each of those layers. And for this, I'm using some warm brown tones to bring in that chocolatey goodness. Just like we did with the pink frosting, I followed the same exact technique for the cake layers as well, adding a lighter shade of brown at the center and then blending in the darker shades towards the edges. Keeping that consistent shading really helps tie the whole design together. And it also adds so much texture and depth, honestly. It starts to make the cake look almost real. Let me know in the comments below. Are you team chocolate or team strawberry? Well, would you go for a classic chocolate cake or something fun like a strawberry cake or, like I'm doing here, chocolate cake with strawberry frosting? Let me know in the comments below. Well, with all this talk about cake, I'm seriously craving something sweet right now. But it's super late. It's almost midnight while I'm recording this voiceover, so I'm not sure I'll be getting any cake anytime soon. Anyways, let's get back to our card cake. Now, once I was done with stencil number two, I peeled it again gently, making sure nothing smudges. And then I bought in stencil number three, which creates the base or the cake stand. Now, for the stand, I used some mid to dark gray tones, slowly building up the color and adding a bit of shading to create those soft shadows and give it a more grounded look. You could definitely take this a step further and use some metallic inks for the cake stand to create a really beautiful, elegant base. Or even clean up your first two stencils and bring them back in to add some fun glitter paste to each of those layers, which would give this cake so much more shine and sparkle. But for this card, I decided to keep things a bit more simple, focusing on soft, beautiful coloring and soft ink blending. Sometimes less really is more, and I love how clean and elegant this is starting to look. Now that our main panel is completely ready, it's time to move on to the card base. For this, I'm creating a top folding A2 size card base. I have a piece of white cardstock that measures 11 by 4 1/4 inches, and I'm going to score it right at 5.5 inches along the longer side. Once I fold it in half, it gives me a perfectly sized top folding A2 size card base. I really like using top folding card bases for shaped cards like this one. It gives the card a nice sturdy structure and makes it easy to display as well. And since our cake design fits inside an A2 size envelope, this base is going to work perfectly without needing any extra adjustments. Clean, simple, and ready for us to build our card. I'm going to keep my card base folded and then place the large cake die right on top. Now, this step is really important. You want to make sure that the top edge of the die slightly extends over the folded edge of your card base. That way, when you run it through your die cutting machine, it does not cut through that fold completely. We want that fold to stay intact because that's what's going to hold our shaped card together. So just take a moment here to double check your placement, making sure everything is aligned nicely before you send it through. Once that's done, you will have a perfectly shaped card base that opens up just like a regular card with a fun twist. I'm going to secure my die in place using a little bit of washi tape just to make sure it doesn't shift at all while going through the machine. Now, since we are working with a shaped card base, I really want to make sure that the cut is nice and precise. Now, this step is a little different from your usual die cutting. Typically, you'd run just a single panel through your die cutting machine, but here we are actually working with two layers at once because of that folded card base. And on top of that, the card bases are usually thicker than your regular panels. So just be a little careful when running this through your machine. You might feel a bit extra pressure, and that's completely normal. You don't want to force anything. Just take it slow and let your machine do the work. And here's a look at our clean, crisp cake-shaped card base. I absolutely love how neat and smooth those edges turned out. It really makes the design feel so polished and professional. Now all that's left to do is assemble our front panel onto this card base and we are almost done. Now for shaped cards like this one, I usually prefer not to use any foam tape. Instead, I go with liquid glue and adhere the front panel directly on the card base. This helps everything line up perfectly and gives a much more seamless finish, especially along those curved edges. Just take a moment here to align everything nicely before pressing it down. And once that's adhered, your card is ready to pop open. You still have plenty of space inside that card to write your personal message. And I love that this design not only works as a card but also sits beautifully on a table as a little display piece. And with that, our cake shaped card is all done. I absolutely love how this turned out. From that soft ink blending and embossed sentiments to this fun, unique shape. It really feels like a little celebration in itself. And the best part, it still fits perfectly inside your standard A2 size envelope, so you get something special without any extra hassle. I hope this inspires you to step out of your usual rectangle cards and try creating something a little more playful and creative. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what's your favorite cake flavor. I will be sure to link all the supplies that I used to create this beautiful card down in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Have you ever looked at a card and wondered what makes it feel so rich and eye catching? Well, for me, it's all in the layers. Today, I'm diving into one of my absolute favorite ways to add depth and visual interest to my designs by layering, and I'm celebrating it with Altenew. I've always loved working with layering stencils because they instantly bring your backgrounds to life and add so much dimension without a lot of efforts. Whether you enjoy stacking cardstock panels, building dimensional die cuts, ink blending with layered stencils, or even experimenting with mixed media textures, there's so many creative ways to add that beautiful layered charm to your paper crafting projects. And today I'm celebrating all things layers by participating in the Altenews Layer It Up video hop. For today's card, I'm using one of my absolute favorites, which is this Garden Gala Craft Your Life Project Kit by Altenew. Now, this set is packed with everything you will need to create a stunning layered design. It includes a large stamp set featuring these two beautiful floral images, along with some lovely sentiments that pair perfectly with those florals. You also get coordinating layering stencils, a gorgeous textured embossing folder, and matching dies to cut out both of those large floral images and the bold sentiments that you see here on the stamp set. Honestly, it is one of those all in one kits that make layering so effortless and fun. Now, this stamp set comes with two beautiful floral images, and honestly, you could use either one for today's design. But as I was planning this card, I found myself drawn to the smaller floral cluster, the one with the two flowers. And the reason is pretty simple, it has a much more open design as compared to the larger floral image. I knew I didn't just want to focus on layering with the stencils, I also wanted to bring in that gorgeous textured embossing folder for my background. So, choosing a more open floral gave me the perfect balance. It leaves enough space for that background texture to really shine through while still letting the florals to be the star of our card. And in the end, that combination of soft layers and added texture really helps those beautiful floral elements pop on my card front. I'm going to start by stamping both my floral image and the sentiment. Now I placed my panel into my stamp wheel and took a moment to carefully align both the floral image and the sentiment onto this panel. And honestly, if you wanted to keep things simple, this layout would make a beautiful one layer card all on its own. But for today's design, we are going to take it a step further because I do plan on die cutting both of these stamped images. Once everything was positioned on the stamp wheel, I stamped both of these images using obsidian pigmenting from Altenew. Now this ink, it is a rich dark black ink that gives a really crisp impression, and it's also perfect if you want to do any kind of heat embossing. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you probably already know this about me. I love adding embossing powder to my stamped images. No matter what technique I'm using, whether it's ink blending or coloring in with alcohol markers, I just can't skip this step. Now, there's something about those raised edges that really defines the image and that subtle shine it adds. I absolutely love how it catches a light on your card front. So before moving on, I stamped my images twice just to make sure I had a really crisp, solid impression, both for my sentiment and the florals. And then I went ahead and added my embossing powder to the stamped images. For my embossing, I'm using clear embossing powder by Altenew. And well, this is something I almost forgot to mention, but it's such an important step. Before I did any of that stamping, I prepped the panel using anti-static powder tool. This just helps remove any static or oil from the surface, so when you add your embossing powder, it only sticks to the stamped areas and not anywhere other than the stamped areas on your background. It's a small step, but it makes such a big difference in getting that clean professional finish at the end. Now, since we are heat setting the embossing powder over a large area, it's really important to make sure your heat tool is nice and warm before you bring it to your panel. I like to start by heating from the back of the panel first and then move towards the front. As I'm heat setting, I keep my heat tool moving constantly. This helps prevent the paper from warping. Now, for today's card, since we'll be die cutting these images, a little bit of warping is totally manageable. But if I were making a one layered card, I would definitely take my time here and be extra careful with the heat just to keep the panel nice and flat. Now, if you do notice a bit too much warping on your panel, that's super easy fix. Just place it under a stack of books or anything heavy for a few minutes and then flatten it right out. But one important tip, make sure your panel has completely cooled down before you do that. You definitely don't want to smudge that freshly melted embossing powder. And once everything is set and ready, we can move ahead to the next step, which is using the coordinating dies, we will cut our images. I absolutely love how beautifully these dies cuts out everything, just not just that floral image, but even the sentiment. And if you take a closer look at the florals, you'll notice it even cuts out those super delicate parts of the stem. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? Now comes my favorite part, which is adding color to these stamped images. Now, you could definitely do your coloring before die cutting, but I personally prefer cutting first because honestly, the last thing I want is to spend time coloring everything beautifully and then risk messing it up during the die cutting process. So, once my pieces are ready, I place them onto my ultra sticky mat to keep everything in place. And then I bring in the coordinating layering stencils, which help me build up those beautiful shades of ink layer by layer. Now, this particular floral has two stencil layers. The first layer adds the base color to the flowers, stems, and leaves, and the second layer brings in all that beautiful detail. Now, before I begin, I will make sure that I align my stencil properly on the flowers. And I like to mask off the edge of my panel using some post-it notes just to keep everything neat and controlled. For today's card, I decided to go with some beautiful shades of pinks for my flowers. This set is the Bubblegum Dreams Fresh Dry Ink. Now, for the first layer, I'm using fuchsia and magenta on the petals. Now, even though this is just the base layer, you can still build in so much depth in just one layer. So, what I like to do is apply the lighter fuchsia all over the petals and then bring the darker magenta right at the center of the flowers. That subtle shift in color instantly adds dimension and draws your eyes right to the middle of our bloom. So even just with one layer, you basically have two different colors to add depth and dimension to your floral image. For my ink blending, I'm using my mini ink blending brushes to lay down the colors, well, both the colors. They work really well for covering the base layer quickly and evenly. But if you're looking for a bit more control, especially in the smaller areas and with the darker shade, you can definitely switch to the micro or the detail blending brushes. And well, that's exactly what I'll be doing with my second layer, where I'll be adding those finer details to my petals using the detailed blending brushes. The same stencil also includes openings for the detail layer of the flowers. So all you have to do is simply shift the stencil and realign those openings with your floral image. Once everything is lined up, I like to cover the rest of the image with a post-it note just to keep things nice and clean. Now for this detail layer, I'm bringing in the darkest shade from the Bubblegum Dream set, which is Jazzberry, to really deepen those tones on the petals. And for this step, I like to switch to a detail blending brush. This is a much thinner brush, which gives me a lot more control, especially when I'm working in these smaller, more intricate areas. And you'll see how this layer instantly adds that extra richness and dimension to our flowers. Now, for smaller and tighter areas like these, I like to switch up my blending technique a little. Instead of going in circular motions, I use light strokes with my brush. I find that it gives a much more even coverage and it really helps avoid any harsh lines from the brush. It just gives you a softer, more controlled blend, especially when you're working with those tiny detailed sections. Next, let's move on to the foliage. For this one, I'm using colors from the Mediterranean Glow set. I'll start with a shade called Olive and blend it all over the open areas of the stencil to build that soft base layer for our leaves. And then, just like we did with the flowers, I'll shift the stencil to line up the detailed layer. For this step, I'm bringing in the deeper shade, which is Sugar Kelp, to add those rich shadows and dimension to the greenery. And you'll see how this two-step layering really makes the foliage come to life. Now, here's another little tip when adding color to your foliage. Try to keep a very light hand at the tips of the leaves and then gradually build more color as you move towards the base. This simple shift helps maintain that soft, cohesive color palette while still adding depth and dimension to each leaf. And if you want to take it a step further, you can even bring a touch of brown or reuse the same pink that you used on your flowers right at the base of the leaf. That'll add a beautiful warmth and give your overall florals a slight vintage feel. Once I'm done with all that ink blending, it's time to remove this little die cut piece from the ultra sticky mat. And instead of pulling on the die cut, which can sometimes damage those delicate little pieces, I like to gently bend the mat itself and let the floral piece lift off naturally. It's such a simple trick, but it really helps keep everything intact. Now that our main focal point is ready, it's time to move to our background. For this one, I'll be using that beautiful Garden Gala 3D embossing folder by Altenew. I absolutely love the texture on this one. It has such a gorgeous abstract design that adds so much interest without overpowering the card. You could also switch things up here and go with a beautiful wood grain texture or even the textured tile embossing folder for a completely different look. I truly feel that embossing folders add so much personality to your cards. Even if you keep the background plain white, that texture might not always show up on camera or in photographs, but in real life, when someone holds that card in their hands, it just feels extra special. It adds that subtle detail that really elevates your entire design. I went ahead and ran a 4 by 5 1 inch white cardstock panel through the embossing folder to create that beautiful textured background. And before adding any more details to this background panel, I wanted to stamp a small sub sentiment onto one of the flatter areas of the panel. So I stamped the word sending using obsidian black pigment ink from Altenew and then heat embossed it with clear embossing powder, just like we did earlier with the florals and the hug sentiment. And when you bring it all together, the sentiment reads sending hugs, which I think pairs so beautifully with that soft layered floral image. Before I start assembling everything, I just like to do a quick check to make sure all my elements fit together perfectly. And this is exactly where the whole design choices really matter. If I'd gone with that larger floral image from the set, it would have completely covered up such a beautiful textured background. And I might have had to even trim parts of that image to make it fit within this 4 by 5 1/4 inch panel. So choosing the smaller floral image really helped maintain that balance, letting both the background texture and the focal point image shine without competing with each other. Now, to add a little something extra to this overall design and really elevate the look of the card, I decided to bring back the same greens that I used on my floral image. I softly blended that green towards the lower part of the panel, keeping the color deeper along the edges, and then gradually fading it out as I moved towards the sentiment, letting it blend right into the white of the panel. This subtle ink blending does two things. It helps ground the focal point image, which is that beautiful floral image, and at the same time, it beautifully highlights all that texture in the background as well. Initially, I had added a touch of pink to the hugs sentiment, but as I stepped back and looked at the overall design, I felt like it needed a bit more cohesion. So I went back in and added the same green just at the base of the sentiment. And all that small change was enough to make such a big difference. It ties everything together beautifully and helps the sentiment feel more connected to the rest of the card. Now, these are those little design choices that you make as you go, and they really do make such a big difference in the final look of your card. Now, for me, this just doesn't feel complete without a few splatters. So, before assembling everything together, I took my panel over to my splatter box and added some black watercolor splatters. Before doing that, I quickly covered my sentiment with a thin strip of cardstock. It does not have to be perfect at all. All I wanted to protect the sentiment and avoid getting any big blobs of color over it. And those tiny splatters, they just add the perfect finishing touch to our card. Now, while that was drying, I went ahead and added some foam tape to both my focal point image and the sentiment. Just that little bit of lift makes such a big difference. It adds a beautiful dimension and really helps those elements stand out against the textured background. Now that my panel is completely dry, I'm going to start assembling everything. I'll begin by adhering my sentiment, placing it right below the stamped word. Now, I like to do this step first before adding the floral image just to make sure that the hugs fits perfectly in place and that I'm not interfering with the placement once I bring in my floral element. It's a small step, but it really helps keep the layout clean and well balanced. I can then go ahead and attach my floral image. And with that, all that's left to do is mount our panel onto a card base. I went ahead and used foam tape to pop up this entire panel onto a white top folding A2 size card base. I used a low profile foam tape for the back so it doesn't add too much extra height to the entire card. Now, since we already have so much dimension going on with the textured background, along with the raised sentiment and the focal point, this little foam tape in the back gives a subtle lift without making the card feel too bulky. I absolutely love how beautifully this card came together, but of course, we need one final finishing touch before we call it done, and that's a little bit of shine and shimmer. So, I'm adding some sparkle to the flowers using glitter brush pen, and well, that subtle shimmer just brings everything to life and adds that perfect finishing detail to our project. And with that, our card is complete. I absolutely love how this turned out. The soft layered looks, that beautiful textured background, and all those little details coming together so effortlessly. It really shows how layering, whether it's with stencils, die cuts, or textures, can add so much depth and interest to your design. I hope this inspires you to play around with layers in your own card making and create something uniquely yours. And since this video is part of the Altenews Layer It Up video hop, don't forget to check out the next stop in the hop for even more inspiration. I'll have all the links listed in the description box below, along with the supplies that I used for today's project. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. And before you go, don't miss out on the fun and exciting prizes. Make sure to leave a comment down below telling me what's your favorite layering technique for a chance to win a gift certificate to Altenew. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. What if your next card wasn't made for an envelope but made to be displayed? Today, we are stepping out from our traditional A2 size cards, creating something truly special, a bold, high impact 5x7 bridge pop up that doubles as a beautiful home decor piece. This design gives our vibrant, hand colored botanicals plenty of space to shine and really come to life. And make sure you stick around till the very end because I'll walk you through how to build this oversized bridge so it stays nice and sturdy. And I'm also sharing my little secret for creating those soft, translucent dragonfly wings that add the perfect finishing touch. Let's get started. I'll be using some papers from the latest box by Your Paper Insider, and honestly, I'm really sad to see this company shut down. They have some absolutely gorgeous and unique papers. They'll be closing on May 1st, so you still have a little time to grab your favorites. Everything currently is at 50% off, which is such an amazing deal. So, if you've been wanting to try them out, now is definitely the time before they're gone for good. I also have an unboxing video where I walk you through everything from this new box number 15 and share some more details about each of those papers. I will leave that link in the description box below so you can check it out. We have some amazing sparkly papers, a fun rainbow of colors, solid color cardstocks, glitter papers, holographic cardstocks, and lots more. Your Paper Insider has always such a wide variety of collection, and I absolutely love each and every paper that is every time included in the boxes. Now, Moving on to our card for today, or well, project for today. To create our large bridge pop-up card, I'm using or starting with this white cardstock panel. This again is by Your Paper Insider, and this one here measures 11 by 7 inches. Once we build our bridge, the final width won't be full 5 inches. It actually comes down slightly to about 4.5 inches. That means it'll still fit nicely inside a standard 5 by 7 envelope if you want to mail it out. Or you can do what I'm planning to do and gift it as a beautiful little decor piece for someone special. To create our bridge mechanism, we'll start by adding a few score lines to this panel, and this step is really what forms the structure of our pop-up. On one side of the panel, begin by scoring at 1 1/4 inches, then move over and score again at 2 1/4 inches, and finally at 3 1/4 inches. These three score lines will create the folds that allow our bridge to stand up and hold its shape from one side. Now, once you have those in place, go ahead and rotate your panel 180-degree. Using the exact same measurements, repeat the process on the other side as well. So again, score at 1 1/4, 2 1/4, and 3 1/4 inches. This ensures that both sides of the card are perfectly symmetrical, which is the key for a sturdy and balanced bridge pop-up design. Now, let's move on to folding along those score lines. We have a total of 6 score lines along the entire panel, and this is where the magic really starts to happen. I'm going to go ahead and fold along each of those lines, working back and forth to create a zigzag fold on both sides of the cardstock. This step is what truly brings the pop-up mechanism to life, so take your time here and make sure each fold is nice and crisp. You can use a bone folder or just your fingers, whatever feels comfortable, but I personally like using my bone folder to get those sharp, clean creases. Now, once you're done, you'll notice the pattern forming. It looks like a W or an M shape from the side. And when both the ends are folded into that zigzag structure, this is what you'll have. You can already see how those raised sections start to create dimension, giving us the base for our bridge pop-up. At this point, believe it or not, the structure of the bridge card is actually complete. From here, the rest of the part is fun. It is all decorating. This is where you can really bring your card to life. Add your favorite pattern papers, incorporate stamped or stenciled backgrounds, layer in die cuts, and finish it off with a beautiful sentiment of your choice. For today's card, I'm reaching out for one of my absolute favorite sets, this gorgeous arched foliage design. It is such a stunning large scale image, but I've never really been able to use the entire thing on a standard card front. So I thought this 5 by 7 project would be perfect opportunity to finally let this entire piece shine. I went ahead and die cut the image using plain white cardstock. Then I placed that die cut piece onto my stamp platform and carefully aligned the large foliage stamp right over it. Using an ultra sticky mat really helps keep everything in place, especially when you're working with big images like this and when you plan on multiple stamping so that everything stays in place. Now, before stamping, I prepped the surface with some anti-static powder and then stamped the image using some Versafine Onyx Black ink. Now, Versafine Onyx Black ink is a pigment ink, and I absolutely love to use that, especially when I am heat embossing on any surface. I did stamp this image a couple of times just to make sure that every detail was crisp and fully inked. Once I was happy with the coverage, I carefully peeled out the die cut piece and I added a layer of clear embossing powder over the entire image and heat set it. To prevent the paper from warping, I used my heat tool along with a holding surface to keep everything nice and flat. Here I will be using my Positively Everything tool that really helps preserve those clean, sharp lines on such a detailed image without any warping. I'm going to let this piece cool down completely before moving on to any kind of ink blending or coloring. This just helps everything set nicely and prevents any smudging. Now, here's a quick side by side comparison of a heat embossed image versus one stamped with just regular dye ink. You can really see the difference. The heat embossing gives you that beautiful raised finish with crisp, glossy shine, while the dye ink has softer, more matte look. Personally, I almost always prefer heat embossing for any image. There's just something about that clean, defined outline and subtle shine that really makes the details pop and elevates the overall look of the card. This set comes with coordinating stencils, which makes coloring super easy, but you absolutely don't have to use them. You could just as easily bring this image to life with your alcohol markers, color pencils, or even watercolors, depending on the look that you're going for. For my card, I decided to stick with the stencil coloring and went with a range of beautiful greens for the foliage. All the shades I'm using are from the Simon Says Positively Saturated Ink collection. I started with a lighter base using field and then blended in fairway to build up some depth. After that, I brought in a deeper shade, which is pine, to add shadows and dimension, and finally finished it off with Aegean for those darker, richer areas. Layering those tones really helps give the foliage a more natural dimensional look without needing a lot of extra effort. Ink blending is such a simple technique, but it can create so much depth and dimension, especially when you stay within the same color family. The key is to work in layers, starting with your lightest shade. This first layer acts as your base and then helps map out the overall shape of your image. Don't worry about perfection here, just focus on getting that smooth and even coverage. Once that's done, you can start building dimension by gradually introducing slightly darker shades every time. I like to add those deeper tones towards the areas that would naturally fall into the shadow, just like the base of the leaf, or where they overlap, or even along the edges. Using a light hand and then building color slowly is really important here. It's much easier to deepen the color than to take it away. As you continue layering, you'll notice how the image starts to come to life. Those subtle shifts between the light, mid-tone, and the dark shades create a beautiful sense of depth, making your flat image look more dimensional and realistic. And a little tip here, go back in with your lightest color at the very end and softly blend over the transitions. This really helps smooth everything out and gives you that seamless, well blended finish. Isn't this piece absolutely gorgeous? I'm so happy with how it turned out. Now, before moving forward, I just wanted to make sure it fits nicely on our bridge, and yes, it does. It sits perfectly across the structure. Now, there is a slight overhang on the sides, but I am totally okay with that. Since our base is about 4.5 inches wide, it still leaves plenty of room to fit inside a 5 by 7 envelope if you plan on mailing it. Or, like I'm doing, you can display it as a decor piece. It looks beautiful sitting on the desk or a shelf. Now, because only a few sections of this die cut piece will actually be adhered to the bridge, I wanted to make sure it's a bit more sturdy. So I went ahead and doubled it up by adding a second layer of the same die cut behind it. This gives it that extra strength and helps it hold its shape nicely once it's all in place. Adding that extra die cut layer doesn't just make the focal image more sturdy, it also gives it a subtle lift and dimension. That slight pop really enhances the overall look of the card, making everything feel more polished and giving your finished project a more professional and high end finish. I like to use liquid glue to adhere these pieces together because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room. That extra time really helps in making sure both the layers are perfectly aligned so they look completely seamless. With a large detailed image like this foliage, even a slightest misalignment can be noticeable. So, taking a moment to adjust everything before it sets makes a big difference in the final result. Now that our main focal point is almost ready, I wanted to pick out a background that would really complement it and sit beautifully on our bridge structure. I pulled out a few of my favorite papers from the box and did a little bit of side by side comparison. There were some really fun options. We had some soft grays, bright yellows, pretty pinks, and even a gorgeous sparkle cardstock. But in the end, I decided to go with the soft yellow. It just pairs so beautifully with the greens and the foliage and really helps the entire design feel bright, warm, and cohesive without overpowering our focal point. Choosing between the gray and the yellow was honestly a tough call. They both looked so good. But I'm really glad I went with the yellow in the end. It adds so much brightness and warmth to the design and really makes the final result feel fresh and vibrant. I've got three strips here that we'll be using to decorate our bridge structure. The main panel, which will go along the back, measures 6 3 by 4 by 4 1 quarter inches. And then I have two smaller strips which will go on each of those side panels. Now each of those strip measures 6 3 by 4 by 1 inch. And these will go on the front section of our bridge. To add a bit more character to all three panels, I decided to bring in stencil number 3 from the set. It creates such a beautiful, subtle background, and I thought it worked perfectly for this project. You could absolutely use an embossing folder here as well, but since these panels are larger than your standard embossing folder, you just want to do some partial embossing to cover the entire surface and still get that lovely 3D texture. But using a stencil, especially one with an abstract design like this one, makes it so much more easier to cover a larger area even if the stencil itself is smaller than the panel. For color, I went with some warm brown tones, cappuccino and latte, to add a soft contrast against the yellow. It gives just enough depth and interest without taking away from the bright, cheerful background. Abstract stencils like these are such a great tool to have in your stash because they are incredibly versatile. Unlike detailed or image based stencils, these designs don't follow a specific pattern or subject. They are more about the texture, movement, and visual interest. What I love most about them is how forgiving they are. You don't have to worry about perfect placement or lining things up exactly. Even if your blending isn't completely even, it still looks intentional and artistic, which makes them perfect for both beginners and experienced crafters. They are also ideal for covering larger areas, especially when your panel is bigger than your stencil itself. You can easily move the stencil around, overlap sections, or even rotate it, and the design will still look seamless because of that organic nature. Another great thing is how well they work for layering. You can build depth by using multiple shades of the same color or even mix in different color families to add more bold and artistic look. And depending on how heavy or light-handed your ink blending is, you can create anything from a soft, subtle background to a more bold and textured effect. Overall, abstract stencils like these are perfect when you want to add interest and depth to your background without competing with your focal point. They enhance your design while still letting the main elements shine. I love how beautiful that contrast looks. Well, another one of my favorite ways to add interest to the background is by using black watercolor splatters. It's such a simple technique, but it makes a huge impact. Black splatters add that perfect touch of contrast and help break up large areas of colors, especially when you're working with softer tones like yellows or any pastels. They instantly draw the eye in and give your card more artistic and finished look, especially working beautifully with this abstract background. I like to keep my splatters fairly controlled, not too heavy, just enough to add that bit of a texture without overpowering the design. You can do this by loading a small brush with that diluted black watercolor and gently tapping it to create fine droplets. It's one of those little finishing touches that adds so much personality and makes your background feel a lot more dynamic and complete. While the watercolor splatters are drying, I went ahead and die cut a few flowers to layer over our foliage. For this, I'm using two sets by Simon's Stamp, the Elegant Blossoms branch and the Feathered Daisies. I'm using the flower elements only from both these sets and skipping the branches and leaves since we are already having plenty of foliage in our main image. I cut all of these flowers using plain white cardstock because I knew I wanted to customize the colors. Now, box number 15 did include a darker shade of pink, which is absolutely beautiful, but I was really going for a softer, lighter pink for this design. Starting with a white cardstock gives you complete control over your color palette. You can build up the shades exactly the way you want, layer by layer, and create that perfect soft pink that complements the rest of the card beautifully. I placed each of those die cut florals onto my ultra sticky mat and then started adding color using some soft pinks. I began with a very light shade of pink, which is peony, and with a very gentle hand, I blended the color starting from the center of the flower and softly moving outward towards the petal. You'll notice I'm keeping most of the color concentrated in the center and the midsection while leaving the tips of the petals mostly white. This helps create a soft, airy look with that natural highlight. Next, I bought in a slightly darker shade, which is rose, and using a smaller ink blending brush, I added a bit more depth right at the center, pulling the color outward in a slight stroke towards the petal. Now, this layering really helps build dimension and gives the flowers a more realistic look. To finish them off, I added a pop of color to the centers using Sunbeam, which is a vibrant yellow. It adds just the right amount of contrast and really brings these florals to life. Next, I went ahead and adhered all the petals together, layering them to build these beautiful dimensional flowers. You could definitely add tiny pieces of foam tape between each of those layers if you want more lift and dimension, but for this design, I chose to keep things a bit more subtle. I used liquid glue and adhered all the layers flat, which still gives a lovely layered look without adding too much bulk. Once all that beautiful layering was done, I brought the flowers over to my foliage and started arranging them. Now, before adhering anything down, I like to take a moment to play around with the placement, moving the flowers here and there until I'm happy with how everything looks. This step really helps in creating a balanced composition and making sure no area feels too crowded or too empty. Only after I'm completely satisfied with the arrangement do I go in with liquid glue and adhere everything in place. Now that our main focal point is complete, we can start building our 3D bridge pop-up design. I'm going to begin by layering the background panels that we set aside to dry earlier. Starting with the back panel, I'm using liquid glue again. This just gives me a little wiggle room to position everything perfectly before it sets. You'll notice I left a thin white border around all those panels, which helps frame each of those sections and adds a clean finished look. But if you prefer a more edge to edge design, you can absolutely trim your panels to fit the exact size of the bridge sections and skip the border altogether. Next, I added a little liquid glue just along the edges of my foliage piece, being really careful with where that adhesive goes. I am only attaching it to the front panels and avoiding the center section completely. This is very important because we want the foliage to float over the bridge rather than being stuck flat against the back. Keeping that middle portion free helps maintain the dimension and really enhances the beautiful pop-up effect. If you notice any small gaps while adhering your foliage, you can gently lift those areas and add a tiny bit more glue to secure everything properly. Just make sure that the piece is firmly attached to the bridge flap so it sits nice and stable. Now, with that, our main focal point is complete. Now it's time to add our sentiment. I decided to go with the hugs sentiment from the same arched foliage set. I first stamped and heat embossed it in gold on white cardstock, but when I placed it on the bridge, it just didn't stand out the way I wanted it. So I switched things up and stamped it again with gold embossing powder, but this time on black cardstock. And that made all the difference. The black background really helps the sentiment pop against all those soft colors and details, adding a bold contrast that ties the whole design together beautifully. At this point, I felt that the design could use just a bit more gold, so I bought in the Whirl Dragonfly die. Now, I cut the wings using this gorgeous gold vellum from box number 15 and paired it with the dark navy blue body center. The combination of that soft shimmer with the deeper tone really helps the dragonfly stand out while still tying in beautifully with the rest of the design. Now, here's a fun little tip. Whenever you're creating a butterfly or dragonfly wings, Try using any kind of shimmery vellum. It catches the light so beautifully and adds that subtle, elegant shine that can really elevate your entire project. I went ahead and adhered my little dragonfly right over one of those flowers, placing it diagonally opposite to where I plan on adding my sentiment. This kind of diagonal placement really helps create a nice visual balance across the design. It draws your eye from one element to the other and makes the overall composition feel more dynamic and cohesive. I added glue only to the body of the dragonfly and left the wings free. That way, they can lift up slightly, giving it a much more natural, delicate look with a bit of movement and dimension. And with that, our beautiful 5 by 7 bridge pop up card is complete. I absolutely love how this turned out, from that bold dimensional structure to the soft blended florals and those delicate little details that really bring everything to life. This design is such a fun way to step beyond the traditional card format and create something that can truly be displayed and enjoyed as a decor piece. It's dimensional, eye catching, and still folds flat into an envelope, and you also have place in the back of the card to write your personal message. I hope this inspires you to try out a bridge pop up design and play around with larger formats, layering, and texture. Don't forget, you can customize this with your favorite colors, stamps, and techniques to give it a completely new and different look. I'll have links to all the supplies I used listed in the description box below, along with links to the unboxing video for box number 15 and few other videos where I've created bridge pop-up cards in the past. So be sure to check those out for more inspiration. Please note that all the supply links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Stop struggling with uneven patterns. This new tool fixes that instantly. No more second guessing your stencil placement, no more misaligned stamping, just perfectly repeated designs every single time. And the best part, it is so easy, it almost feels like cheating. Today I'm putting the brand new print and pattern tool from Sizzix to test, and by the end of this video, you might never go back to your old stencil techniques again. I'll walk you through exactly how it works, share a simple technique you can start using today, and of course, create a few beautiful cards along the way. Hello, crafty friends, I'm Revati, and let's create something new today. Now, this is the brand new print and pattern tool by Sizzix. This is designed by Catherine Pooler. It's a clever stencil and stamp accessory that makes pattern play simple, fun, and incredibly easy. This dual purpose tool takes the hassle out of creating repeat patterns with both stencils as well as stamps. In today's video, I'll be unboxing it and sharing a few tips and tricks that I picked up while creating two absolutely gorgeous designs. We'll be talking about all the components of this tool and how I went about creating some fun stamped and stenciled patterns. The components in this tool include a ruler that helps you align your stamps and stencils both horizontally and vertically every time. This makes it so easy to build backgrounds, borders, or repeating motifs without any of that guesswork. The vertical ruler fits perfectly onto the hinged base, making it simple to reposition and create seamless patterns. You also get two separate attachments, one for your stamps and one for the stencils. These are designed beautifully to pair with Catherine Pooler's latest collection of layering stencils and stamps, allowing everything to work together effortlessly. Now, it also gives you the freedom to explore and experiment and create your own unique pattern designs again and again. In this box, there are three stencils and one stamp set that is included, which is what I'll be using to create our cards today. To begin, I'll first remove the door of my stamp platform. It's really simple. The hinge design allows it to come apart very easily. Once that's done, I can place the new hinge tool right into the gap of the platform where it fits perfectly in place. Next, I'll press the button on the main ruler and slide it into the hinge tool. From here, I can position it anywhere along the track depending on where I want to stamp my design and where I want my design to sit on the card panel. The longest section of the main ruler is where you'll attach either your stamp accessory or the stencil accessory. Just like we press the button to slide the ruler onto the hinge tool, we'll do the same here as well. Each of these accessories has a small little button that allows them to glide smoothly along the ruler, making repositioning quick and effortless. You'll also notice some numbers that are etched along both the sides of the ruler. These act as a guide to help you evenly space out your design and maintain consistent gaps between each repeated pattern. This starter kit included 3 stencils, and for my first card, I'll be using this diamond pattern stencil. I placed my A2 size panel onto the sticky mat on my stamp platform. One of the things I really love about this tool is that you can position your panel anywhere and still create a perfectly aligned geometric pattern. Next, I lined up my stencils into those small hooks on these stencil accessories. Since this was my very first time using the tool, I made sure to mask off any areas where I didn't want color. For my first color palette, I went with a fun combination of green and yellow. I started by blending green ink through the open areas of the stencil. You'll notice that my horizontal guide is set at number 2 and the vertical guide is at number 3. These reference points really help when it comes to moving the stencil around and building your pattern with precision. Once the first layer was completed, I shifted the stencil up to number 8 along the vertical ruler. This keeps the spacing consistent and ensures that the diamonds are perfectly aligned, giving us a clean, evenly spaced pattern. I then used the same green ink to fill in this next set of diamonds. To add a bit more interest, I decided to turn this into an argyle pattern. For that, I bought in my secondary color, which was yellow. All I had to do is reposition the stencil tool to point number 5 on the ruler, which is right at the midpoint between the two green diamonds. This helps keep everything evenly spaced and nicely aligned. I then blended a beautiful shade of yellow through the open areas of the stencil, and once I removed the stencil, you can really see that classic argyle patterns start to come together. Well, you could definitely continue this pattern across the entire background, but since this was my very first time trying out this tool, I chose to keep the design nice and minimal. Next, I wanted to see how stamping would work with this pattern. So I kept my panel exactly where it was, removed the stencil accessory and swapped it for the stamp accessory instead. I then took 2 geometric stamps included in the starter kit and positioned them right onto my design, placing the larger pattern over the green diamonds and the smaller dotted design over the yellow ones, and inked them up using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Just take a look at how beautiful that pattern turned out. And just like that, we shifted the stencil a few points along the ruler to build that diamond pattern. I followed the same exact process with my stamps as well. And I simply moved the stamp tool along the guide until it lined up perfectly with the next green diamond, making it so easy to keep everything consistent and evenly spaced. This was definitely a magic moment for me. I was so happy with how that pattern turned out that I immediately wanted to try it again with a completely different design. So this time, I bought in the circle stencil from the starter kit and decided to create something similar, but with a little twist. Now, instead of using both the larger and the smaller images like we did before, I kept the design more focused and chose to work with just one row of those beautiful circles across my panel. I specifically picked the larger circle as my focal point, and to make sure that the design stayed clean and intentional, I carefully masked off the smaller circle along with any other openings and edges on the stencil. Once everything was prepped, I went in with a gorgeous blend of pinks and oranges to add color to my circles. I love how these warm tones start to bring the whole design to life, and even at this stage, you can already see that fun, playful pattern coming together. I continued shifting the stencil tool a few points down along the ruler to build this row of circles across my card front. I started by ink blending the circles in pink and then went back in with that beautiful orange right in the centers of the pink circles. I absolutely love how those two colors blend together, The soft transition where the pink and orange meet create a very warm and glowing effect. Now, this is one design that you could easily turn into a full background. You could stick with either the same color combination or even switch things up for a fun rainbow palette. But since this was the very first time I was using this tool, I chose to keep the design nice and minimal. Once I finished the stenciling, I removed the stencil accessory and swapped it out for the stamp accessory. The starter kit includes some of those really fun geometric stamps which work perfectly for this design. I stamped the patterns directly onto the circles using VersaFine Onyx Black ink for the pink circles to get that crisp, bold impression, and a darker shade of orange to add a tone on tone detail to my orange circles. I absolutely love how easy this tool is to use. It really makes creating geometric designs feel so effortless. All you have to do is move the ruler either horizontally or vertically to build your pattern. You can keep it simple with a single line design like we did on both our cards today, or go all out and cover the entire background with bold, colorful patterns. And honestly, that's the best part. This tool gives you the freedom to explore, experiment, and create your own unique pattern designs over and over again. Just take a look at how gorgeous that pattern turned out. You'll notice there's a little bit of space at the bottom of that orange circle, but that's totally fine because I'll be trimming this panel down to 4 by 5 and quarter inches, which is slightly smaller than your standard A2 size card base. I really love how both these designs came together. I'll admit I'm usually more of a floral person, but the more I played with this tool and more I found myself falling in love with these geometric patterns. In fact, I ended up creating a whole bunch of different designs later that evening, and I was honestly amazed. There are just so many fun color combinations to explore, and it really gets your creativity going. Since the main focus of this video was to show you how that print and pattern tool works, I went ahead and finished these cards off camera by adding some fun sentiments and a little bit of bling. For the circle card, I used the die cut word thank from the new folk alphabet die set. I absolutely love these folk style letters. They have such a playful decorative details. I paired it with a small stamped sentiment that says you, which complements the die cut perfectly. There are all 26 letters, and I absolutely love the detail on each one of them. And you could pair them with either colored cardstock or even gold cardstock. These pop up perfectly along that white background. For the diamond design, I kept the sentiment nice and simple since I really wanted that background to shine. I just stamped the phrase thinking of you to finish it off. So those are the cards that we created using the new print and pattern tool by Sizzix along with some latest products in collaboration with Catherine Polar. I absolutely love this tool and I can already see myself reaching for it again and again for so many different projects. And well, when I'm done, cleaning up is just as easy. I simply slide both the stencil and stamp accessories back onto the ruler, remove the entire hinge assembly, and replace it with the door of my stamp platform. Everything stores away neatly with my other tools like the Sizzix registration press tool and the stamp and spin tool, keeping my workspace nice and organized every time. I truly enjoyed exploring this tool. It makes creating geometric patterns so simple and at the same time gives you so much room to experiment and get creative. Whether you prefer clean and minimal designs or bold, full backgrounds, this tool really helps open up so many different possibilities. I'd love to know which of these two designs was your favorite, the diamond pattern or the colorful circles. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more fun card making inspirations and techniques. I will leave links to all the supplies that I used in today's video along with all the fun new release products in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.